Okay, in lesson 8, we're going to focus a bit on interpreting feedback and avoiding common mistakes. I know we talk a lot about getting feedback and making iterations, but there's also challenges in getting that kind of feedback and knowing how to utilize it. And so, um, a lot of feedback is going to be really helpful for you to test and iterate and validate your ideas, but we also want to make sure that you avoid some of the pitfalls because there's definitely some biases and opinions that get generated out of this feedback, and you can't react to all of them. And we'll also give you some clear examples of everyday products and software that you use that utilize feedback to make adjustments, and so that you could really understand what that might look like in your product or solution. Companies like Facebook, Meta, Instagram are always testing new features by launching and prototyping new features in a very specific, smaller market instead of doing a massive global launch. I know this is different than the scale that we're talking about, but it's an illustrative example how even the most mature products are doing this. And so what we're going to cover in this lesson is how to analyze the feedback and identify some of the trends that you'll see while staying true to your purpose and the vision you have for your product or service. Educators are great at reviewing feedback. We have a lot of practice giving feedback to students and to our peers. We also know that we have to separate kind of fact from our opinion or biases. We also see that there needs to be long-term trends of certain behaviors and the feedback that we see. So the same is true for your product or service. And I know sometimes it's harder to take because it's something that you've created. But what we have to do is we have to separate the facts from the opinion. And sometimes you have to interpret that from the feedback you get. We also have to ask for a lot of feedback across a diverse group because we want to see what kinds of trends are occurring in the feedback and make small adjustments to the product or service based on the observation so that you get kind of the optimal result. This is true for all aspects, whether you're developing a methodology or developing a new app. You're going to want to make small tweaks to it based off the feedback you're hearing and the trends you're hearing so that you could constantly test those little ideas. If you think about companies like Amazon, whenever you go to the Amazon website, you might not notice all of the little things that they're testing around placement of products or new features that they're offering or how to promote more related sales. They're always changing the layout of that page to see and to collect data around how people are clicking on different sections of the web page to see if they could drive more traffic that way. And so those little tweaks are the things that help optimize your product or service over a long period of time.
So, when it comes to gathering feedback, I'll share two examples, both from my own consulting practice. In my consulting practice, I do a lot of strategic planning. And one of the things I had learned, here's my team, one of the things I had learned in the corporate space was bringing something called strategic bets into strategic planning to make strategic planning more agile. And really, it's about moving away from the traditional thinking of a strategic plan as a plan versus a strategic plan as a hypothesis. So, when you are using strategic bets, really you are planning for uncertainty. It's a proposal, things are dynamic, there's progress over perfection, and it allows you to have a both and mindset versus the traditional strategic planning. It's really kind of all or nothing, either or, it's fixed, it's directive, and you really have to have all the data and have the right answer before you can actually make that strategy, right? So this was kind of the why I wanted to bring this notion of strategic bets and bring it into schools. So what did I do? First thing I did was I tested out with a small nonprofit. This was their board. And I had them make some strategic bets for their organization. And the feedback I got for this nonprofit was this concept works. This concept, people resonate with it. It's very appealing. However, there were some things that I think needed to be clarified. One of them was, well, who makes these bets? Is it the board? Is it the staff? At kind of what level do they make these bets? The next test and feedback I got was I actually did it with a whole school. And this was a school that was really innovative and wanted to do something different. And the one of the big feedbacks I got was that the timing of these bets, right? The timing of these bets really need to kind of fit with the flow of the school year. So, the way I was framing these bets was really more open and it could be any time you want. But as I worked with the school, the feedback I got was, no, actually, it needs to fit with the school year. The other thing feedback I got, which was really helpful, that reinforced the feedback I got from the nonprofit was, at what level do we make these bets? Is it the board? Is it the leadership team? Is it the district? Is like where do these bets sit? And is it at all levels? Finally, I also got feedback that the words strategic bets wasn't working for this school. It felt very transactional. They were like, what about pilots? What about calling these? Because, the language of pilots works well in schools and it's familiar. And this might not be a piece of feedback I take because ultimately pilots indicate that it's a beginning of something more certain, right? And whereas bets indicate this is a test, this is a hypothesis, this is an experiment. So, that's an example of feedback maybe I won't take, maybe I will still keep it, but maybe there's something else that I could call these to make it work better. I want to give another example, something that is more real time for me right now. So I'm launching something new called the Retreat Collective. And here's a kind of a landing page I created. And I'm getting feedback right now on this. And here's the type of feedback I'm getting so far. One, in terms of the look and feel, the aesthetics of it, I'm getting that this feels like very West Coast, this feels very bold. And it's very feminine. I got that feedback. And some of this maybe, I would say, maybe I don't need to take, right? However, if we're selling our services as a consulting company, maybe it's something I want to consider. And also West Coast bold and feminine, that is me. So I'm like, maybe I'd love that. The other thing that I got feedback on was our tagline, turning moments of reflection, renewal, reconnection into transformational progress. That really works. So I'm going to keep trying that. But another piece of feedback I got was that it's hard. It takes a lot of investment and time for school teams and for districts to actually invest into retreats. So maybe that's not something I want to really put all my eggs in one basket for, right? But in my mind, maybe it's just having need to find the right customer. So this is where I'm giving myself a couple more weeks to get more feedback, gather more feedback, and before I test this more broadly. And I want to test it more broadly in February now because it's right in line with budget season and when budgets are being made for next school year. So I want to launch it more broadly. The way I might launch it and test it beyond getting individual feedback is like maybe posting it on LinkedIn or sending a network email to my network. So those are some examples, two examples. One I'm currently working on and still getting feedback on, and the other I've gotten feedback and have been actually implementing in schools. Hopefully this gives you an idea and gives you makes it more concrete, kind of what types of feedback is valuable and what types of feedback maybe you can hold off on and decide later if you want to implement.